Menendez brothers.
Menendez brothers.
Menendez brothers.
Menendez brothers.
They are too fine to go to prison. Whoa!
This is not television. This is not movies. This is real life. The fact of the matter is, this is not an organized crime.
I had no reaction to the Menendez brothers. There was no visceral reaction. I didn't feel like I was in the presence of pure evil. They were like potted plants to me. They were like poisonous potted plants, but there was nothing about them that I found fascinating. They were just these dumb jock killers.
She had known about Erik, the abuse, all the time. And she said to Lyle, "What, do you think I'm stupid?" She had known everything that had been going on, and she hadn't done anything to protect her son.
And what we will prove to you is it was done out of fear. They were afraid of Jose Menendez, and they were afraid of Kitty Menendez.
It's not supposed to happen in Beverly Hills. A movie executive and his wife were brutally slain in their $1 million mansion.
Not many Hollywood murder mysteries ever took a more dramatic turn.
This trial will take you behind the facade of the rich houses.
It's one of the most sensational criminal cases in the country. Lyle and Erik Menendez, the brothers accused of murdering their rich parents in Beverly Hills.
I told them that I knew what was going on with him and Erik.
My dad me.
In 1989, the Menendez brothers case was one of the first to receive extensive media coverage, providing the public an unfiltered platform to voice their opinions. Yet, overlooked insights, the emergence of a new victim, and shocking new evidence may reshape the entire narrative of this high-profile case.
Beverly Hills emergency?
Yes, police.
What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my parents.
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Were they shot?
Hey, man, you.
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
102, 102, response 722, North Omaha.
What happened?
A couple was sitting around watching TV when their adult sons came in with shotguns and slaughtered them. What did these parents do to deserve that? There must be a reason.
I've just never been a kid of guilt or innocence. It was always about why it happened.
When I walked into the room and, the television was on and, there was blood and body parts all over the place.
I think one of the Beverly Hills detectives described it as one of the most brutal crime scene he had ever seen in his life.
I've been in this business for over 33 years, and I've heard of very few murders that were more savage than this one was.
The tale that took the world by storm had its grim beginnings with the death of the Menendez couple, Jose Menendez, who was shot 6 times, including a fatal blow to the back of his head with a 12-gauge shotgun, while his wife, Kitty Menendez, suffered 10 gunshot wounds. The couple endured multiple shots that laid bare the killer's determination to end their lives in the most painful way possible. When police arrived, Lyle, 21, and Erik, 18, claimed they had been at a movie theater at the time of the killings.
They were ordering the occupants out of the house, which was Lyle and Erik, and they came running out of the house extremely despondent and carrying and crying and yelling and that kind of stuff. And Erik ran from the doorway across the driveway to this tree and started trying to bash his head against the tree. And he had to be physically restrained by the officer.
Our feeling was not, we'll just explain what happened and it'll be okay. We were very stunned, and we felt that we would go to jail, obviously.
They didn't do any gunshot residue test on their hands. They let them go back and get evidence without even thinking, hey, could it have been the kids?
Police suspicion intensified as the two brothers embarked on a spending spree following their parents' deaths.
Lyle returned to the Princeton area and began a kind of spending frenzy. His friends say they thought it was his way of dealing with his grief. Over several weeks, he bought clothes, a Rolex, a $62,000 Porsche. Rather than return to school, he bought a restaurant, saying his mother would have been pleased.
Jose Menendez was the self-made millionaire. He was very driven, very demanding. The prosecution's theory was they got tired of their lives being micromanaged. They wanted to spend the money the way they wanted to spend the money. They were buying Rolex watches. They were buying real estate. The way that they acted was not like, oh my goodness, my parents are dead. It was soulless.
It was strictly greed from day one.
You believe they wanted a portion of the money?
They wanted it all.
Within several months, we knew they had done it, and it was not an organized crime hit.
Erik Menendez called Dr. Jerome Oziel and said that he needed to come talk to him about something.
When Eric's therapist, Dr. Oziel, was brought in to testify, a shocking twist was revealed that blew the case wide open.
He sat on the bench, and for a significant period of time, Erik told me things about his father and how his father was a great man and how he intended to write a book about his father. And we headed back to the office, and right before we entered the front door of the office building in which I had my office, he leaned back against, as I recall, a parking meter that was in front of the office door and said, we did it. I don't know if he said we killed our parents, but I asked him, you mean you killed your parents? He said yes. And from that point, we went back up into the office.
As a juvenile, Erik had been caught in a burglary and was sent to therapy after being deemed mentally ill during the trial. Jose ensured strict documentation was in place before Dr. Oziel began treating Erik. After the murders, Erik chose to return to those therapy sessions, which unfortunately didn't turn out well for the brother.
Dr. Oziel told the brothers that perhaps they should record an audio tape that would show that they had remorse just in case they ever were arrested. And it was at this time that he invited his girlfriend, Judelon Smith, to sit in the waiting room just in case anything crazy took place or the brothers started making threats.
If I didn't please him and if he didn't love me, then I was going to end up dead.
And why did you think you were going to end up dead?
Because he told me.
And did he say how you were going to end up dead?
Yes, he said that he would call Lyle and Erik and tell them that I had been outside the door and that I knew and that I was wanting to go to the police and that they would kill me.
The Beverly Hills police got a search warrant and seized the audio tapes. Jerry Oziel was freaked out when the police came back to his house with the audio tapes. He was jumping up and down and saying, I'm in danger, my wife's in danger, Judelon Smith is in danger, you need to listen to these tapes right now. And so the Beverly Hills police, they listened to the audio tapes and they heard the confession of Erik and Lyle Menendez to murdering their parents.
When Erik and I did the courage beyond belief, beyond faith. And there was no way I was going to make a decision to kill my mother without Erik's consent. I didn't even want to influence him in that decision. I just let him sleep on it in a couple days.
We knew that the brothers had killed their parents. It was time to arrest everyone.
Later that afternoon, Lyle Menendez was arrested coming out of his house with two friends from Princeton.
Meanwhile, Erik was in a tennis tournament in Israel when Lyle was arrested. And when he heard that Lyle had been arrested, it took him 3 days to come home to turn himself in.
We have evidence that will prove that they were experiencing fear, that they were in imminent danger of death or great bodily injury at the hands of their parents.
The brothers' team aimed to humanize their story by choosing female defense attorneys. Leslie Abramson and Jill Lansing's approach shed light on the psychological scars of abuse, challenging both the jury and the public to take the trauma narrative more seriously. Before their attorneys became involved, the brothers were unable to open up about abuse. But with their support, they finally shared their experiences, changing the course of the case.
All right, then, I'll now turn to the lawyers, and they may make their opening statements.
We will prove to you that Lyle Menendez planned this murder and then set off to spend the money which he had acquired through the killings of his parents. I remember making an opening statement, going in the bathroom and throwing up because it was like there was a lot of pressure.
Taking a life can never be justified. But the circumstances leading to such a brutal choice demand attention. As the prosecution's aggression intensified, it was now the defense's turn to strike an emotional chord.
You heard about some of the things that he liked to do to his little boy. And one of them was to stick tacks like this in his thighs and in his...
It was time for the world to hear the harrowing confessions that would go on to leave the world stunned.
What do you believe was the originating cause of you and your brother shooting your parents?
Me telling.
You telling Lyle what? Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
My dad. My dad. If you don't ask, my dad had me.
And did you want something from your brother? Is that why you told him?
I wanted to stop.
Were you seeking help from your brother?
Yes.
I told him that it was basically oral sex that was happening.
Okay. And did you tell him anything about any kind of violence that would accompany it or any kind of threats from your father?
Yes.
And what did you tell him about violence?
I told him that there were pins and tacks that Dad would stick in me and use.
Pins.
Could you speak up, please?
That Dad would stick in me and use.
Pins and tacks?
Yes.
And did you give him the impression that these pins and tacks were being used during oral?
Yes.
And in fact, was that something that did happen between yourself and your father when you were a teen?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you tell him about any weapons that your father ever threatened you with?
I told him that he threatened me with a knife.
Now, Mr. Menendez, do you remember the kind of knife that your father threatened you with?
Yes.
What kind was it?
It was a jagged knife.
A what?
A jagged knife on one end. It was a Rambo knife.
A Rambo knife?
Yeah, a knife that he had.
This is a proof sheet of the sequence of the photographs from Eric's 6th birthday party. These photographs were found in this envelope. This envelope has the handwriting of his mother, Mary Louise Menendez. This is the one of Lyle's nakedness, which was saved by his mother.
He would take photographs of us, our private parts.
And would he have you come in and pose for these photographs, or how would that happen?
I would just, if we were in the showers or bathtub or changing, he would just use the same camera that my mother used, and then he would come in and take just a photograph or two, and he wouldn't say anything, and then he would leave.
The prosecution's theory is that the boys, the children, took the naked pictures.
After sports practices, he would massage me, and we would have these talks, and he would show me, and he would fondle me, and he would ask me to do the same with him, and I would touch him, and we would undress.
Where would this take place?
In my bedroom, like 2 or 3 times a week. We would be in the bathroom, and he would put me on my knees, and he would guide me, all my movements. He used objects.
What kind of objects?
A toothbrush and some sort of shaving utensil brush.
And what would he do with the toothbrush?
Well, in the bedroom, we'd have what we called object sessions. He'd have a tube of Vaseline and he just played with me.
Did you tell your mom?
Yes.
What did you say to your mom?
I told her to tell Dad to leave me alone. And he keeps touching me. She told me to stop it. And that I was exaggerating. And that my dad has to punish me when I do things wrong. And she told me that he loved me.
Lyle's testimony offered a completely new perspective on the case, though some critics argued he was playing a false victim. But Eric's reaction only deepened the plot. What Lyle revealed next was a confession so horrifying that even Erik struggled to bear it.
Did you tell your brother? Did you do something to your brother?
Yes.
What did you do to your brother?
I took him out to the woods. Whenever I felt, I don't know, I took him out sometimes, and I took a toothbrush also, and I played with Erik in the same way. And I'm sorry.
When you were about 13, did you think that it might be happening to someone else?
Yes.
And who did you think it was happening to?
Erik.
And did you do something about it?
Yes.
What did you do?
I talked to my dad.
What did you say to your dad?
I told him that I knew what was going on with him and Erik, and I heard noises, and that I wanted him to leave Erik alone.
You just learned that your brother had basically threatened to tell on your father.
Yes.
If the two of you disappeared that night, did you have in mind anything that your father might think about that?
Well, I thought Dad was going to kill us, and no matter where we went, anywhere, he was going to kill us. Obviously, my dad thought that Lyle and I were going to go tell somebody.
So if you left the house that night, what do you think your dad would have thought?
That we were going to tell.
That you had gone to tell?
I don't know if we had gone to tell that instant, but that we were definitely going to tell.
So where did the conversation with your brother Lyle lead to Thursday night?
It led to us having to buy guns. Led to Lyle saying, we got to protect ourselves. We got to do something. Because I kept eliminating all of his options.
Okay, he was coming up with options.
Yeah, I was pretty much just crying and doing whatever I was doing. And he was saying, well, what if we could do this? Well, what if we do that? And he said, calm down, we'll work it out. And I was just not being very helpful.
Did you think any of the options would work?
No.
So a decision was made to try to protect yourselves yourself. Is
Yes.
that it? And you were talking about the fact that Dad would kill you. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you think your mother would stop him?
Oh, I thought my mom would do it with him. There wasn't no one and the other.
Why did you think your mother would do it with him?
Because that's who my mom was. They were very much of a team. Besides the fact that my mom hated us, they were a team.
Were you so sure that your mother hated you before Thursday night as you were after?
After, I definitely knew. I mean, for her to have known all those years, I knew she must have hated me, but I thought it before as well.
The murders could be viewed as a desperate reaction from two individuals who felt powerless to confront their abuser with societal norms, leading to a tragic and misguided attempt to break free from their parents permanently.
I had since talked to many people who said, yeah, I've met Jose Menendez. He was like one of the most horrible people on earth. He was brutal, and he raised 2 kids capable of murder. So what more can you say about a guy? His wife was a victim.
Even more shocking was the testimony from family members about Jose Menendez's character.
Lyle came down, and he was asking if he could, I thought he was there to say goodnight. And he started asking me if he could sleep down there because Kathy had already gone and there was 2 single beds.
Okay.
He proceeded to indicate to me by touching himself down and saying that his dad and him had been touching each other down there.
Jose Menendez was a dictator, kind of like a Castro. And he ruled the roost with tyranny, not with love and affection, with tyranny.
For me, it was just dark and confusing and total belief that there was danger. You know, it's fight or flight to a degree. It was panic.
The brothers' drastic actions might reflect a psychological response to feeling trapped in a life-or-death situation, shaped by years of alleged abuse and humiliation that could have left them too ashamed to reveal. The taboos surrounding male victims at the time only deepened their silence, as they feared the consequences of speaking out would bring ridicule or disbelief rather than justice. In their minds, the idea of escaping through violence may have seemed like the only way to escape from an unbearable reality.
Since our last report to you, we have been unable to move closer to agreement on any of the counts.
With the courtroom divided, it soon became a high-profile case receiving extensive media coverage, raising the question, did all the attention influence the verdict?
Tonight, with the Erik Menendez jury deadlocked, a mistrial has been declared in his case.
Had the brothers come from a lower socioeconomic background, their abuse claims might have been taken more seriously, as society often views the wealthy as immune to genuine suffering. This perspective reveals that wealth doesn't shield one from trauma. Instead, their affluence distorted public perception, reducing their abuse claims to the stereotype of greedy rich kids.
In the second trial, Judge Weisberg changed a lot of major evidence rulings and did not allow the family history to come in during the guilt phase of the trial.
The jury in the second trial was given first-degree murder or not guilty. Well, they said they did it. Okay, so it's first-degree murder.
The verdicts are in the retrial of Erik and Lyle Menendez.
This time, a Los Angeles jury went beyond the tearful testimony of brothers Lyle and Erik Menendez and found them guilty of the shotgun murders of their mother and father.
The new evidence came in the form of Roy Rosselló, the overlooked victim of Jose Menendez. In an affidavit, Puerto Rican singer Roy Rosselló from the band Menudo claimed he visited Jose Menendez's home in the early 80s at the age of 15. After drinking a glass of wine, he said he felt he had no control over his body and was then taken to a room where Menendez allegedly assaulted him. Rosselló also alleged Menendez abused him on 2 other occasions, once just before and once after a performance at Radio City Music Hall in New York.
Y al momento me ofrecieron una copa de vino. Yo tenía 13 años. Ricardo no acostumbraba a servir bebidas alcohólicas. También hay ese punto. José Menéndez me dijo, toma este vino, es un vino carísimo, y tómate toda la taza. Después que yo me la tomé, yo me comencé a sentir un cansancio, un peso. Yo no podía más moverme. A partir de ese momento, yo solamente veía cosas como que desenfocadas. Alguien me empujó, alguien me cargó, alguien trying to push me. Y yo caminé un pasillo bien largo. Y había un cuarto. Yo no podía reaccionar porque eso me estaba tomando cuenta de mi cuerpo. Me drogaron. Y después de eso, yo amanecí en el hotel. ¿Cómo yo llegué al hotel? Yo no sé. Pero cuando yo fui al baño, I was bleeding. Y yo estuve una semana con un dolor terrible. Con un dolor que no podía más. No me podía ni mover. Yo me acuerdo que yo tenía que simular que yo no estaba con dolor, pero el dolor estaba tomando cuenta de mi vida. Que era un dolor terrible. Y sangré muchísimo. Y yo le mostré a Carlos, mira Carlos, mi ano está sangrando. Ah, tranquilo. Ya luego se te va a sanar. Ya luego tú estarás listo. Eso fue lo que yo pasé.
I met Roy, and he talked to me about it. It was a difficult conversation for him. It was difficult for me to hear, but I thought Roy was credible. It can take years for people to recognize what happened, to have the courage to come forward.
What did you think when you heard about these new claims and evidence?
I mean, for me, I just was happy. Just a burden to be telling what happened to and just have so much doubt in the public air.
In the early 1990s, society's reluctance to recognize male abuse likely influenced how the brothers' defense was perceived. With a more open and understanding view of male abuse victims, their claims might have been considered with greater nuance, potentially impacting public and judicial responses to the case.
My name is Cliff Gardner. I represent Erik and Lyle Menendez. It's not a complex case. It's a simple case. They were abused their whole life.
In the midst of what seemed to be lifelong damnation, a glimmer of hope shone through for Menendez brothers in the form of a rather unique development.
We now have evidence that makes absolutely clear that those boys were molested. And if those boys were, it would have been manslaughter, and they would be out. If the judge finds this evidence credible, I think it is sufficient to give them a new trial.
Cliff Gardner, the current attorney for Lyle and Erik Menendez, argues that the case involved imperfect self-defense, where the brothers genuinely believed they needed to act to save their lives, even if that belief may not appear rational.
They had the defense of imperfect self-defense. And if it's honest but unreasonable, you are culpable of manslaughter, not of murder.
34 years of incarceration. You wonder when will there be a fair review of this? So maybe now.
My hope in the case is that they'll finally walk out of prison.
I try not to be defined by that one night. That's sort of a lifelong journey. Not to be defined by that one night.
In May 2023, Erik and Lyle filed a habeas petition to overturn the murder convictions based on new evidence. On October 3rd, 2024, Los Angeles District Attorney George Gaskin announced that his office is reviewing the case to determine if it warrants a resentencing or retrial. We will also explore the trending case of a celebrity facing similar accusations as Jose Menendez, raising the critical question, was Jose Menendez part of a twisted network that enabled him to commit such heinous crimes without consequence? Just how far does this network reach? Like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more such content.